All right, let's jump right into one of the most electrifying and, honestly, most misunderstood ideas in all of philosophy, Nietzsche's Übermensch. Now, I'm going to guess that when you hear that word, your mind probably jumps to a superhero, right? A cape, superpowers, the whole deal. Well, if that's you, stick around because we're about to unpack something way more profound. Let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we've got to tackle that Superman thing head on. Then, we'll dig into the big crisis Nietzsche was responding to, why he even came up with this idea in the first place. After that, we'll look at his wild solution, the path of self-overcoming. And then we absolutely have to debunk some really dangerous myths that have popped up around this. And finally, we'll bring it all home and see what this challenge really means for us, right here, right now.
All right, section 1. And yeah, first things first, let's just get the biggest misconception out of the way immediately. So, be honest, when you hear Nietzsche's Superman, what's the first image that pops into your head? It's probably a guy in a cape, isn't it? Someone with superhuman strength, flying around, a literal Superman. That's what most people think.
But, and this is the absolute key to understanding everything else, that's not what Nietzsche was talking about, not even close. It has nothing to do with biology, or genetics, or superpowers. The Übermensch isn't a person, it's a philosophical ideal. It's a goal, a kind of North Star for humanity to aim for. Think of it as a state of being, not some kind of biological level up.
Okay, so if it's not a superhero, then what the heck is it? Well, to really get Nietzsche's answer, we have to go back and understand the massive problem he saw looming over all of society. This is the why behind the whole concept.
You've probably heard his famous and super dramatic declaration, God is dead. Now, hold on. He wasn't making a theological statement. What he meant was that the entire religious and moral framework that had propped up Western civilization for, centuries was falling apart. That central source of meaning, of right and wrong, that universal moral compass, he saw it dissolving. The very foundation was cracking.
So what happens when a foundation like that disappears? What rushes in to fill that giant, gaping void? For Nietzsche, the answer was terrifying: nihilism. This is the profound sense that nothing matters, that life is totally meaningless. It's despair, it's stagnation. If there's no grand plan, no objective truth to hang on to, then what's the point of anything? That was the abyss he saw humanity staring into.
But here's where Nietzsche gets really interesting. He didn't just throw his hands up in despair. He looked at this terrifying crisis and saw a massive opportunity, a once-in-a-civilization chance. For the first time ever, he argued, humanity was truly free. Free from the old rules, the old dogmas. We were finally free to create our own values, to define our own meaning, right from scratch.
And that right there leads us perfectly into our next section. So you're staring into the abyss of meaninglessness. What do you do? Nietzsche's answer was incredibly bold. He proposed a brand new goal for all of humanity.
And this is it. This is the Übermensch, sometimes translated as the Overman. This isn't just a person, it's a type of person. The kind of individual who looks at that void and doesn't flinch. They don't fall into despair. Instead, they see a blank canvas. They have the courage and the strength to say no to the old, conventional, follow-the-crowd moralities and to forge their very own values, to create a whole new way of living, purely from their own will.
Okay, that sounds pretty epic, right? But what does it actually mean? How does someone even begin to strive for something like that? Let's get practical and break down what this path actually looks like.
Think of it as a constant 3-part cycle. Step 1 is self-overcoming. This is the big one. It's about constantly battling your own limitations, your comfort zones, your weaknesses, always pushing to become more than you are. Then step 2 is embracing what Nietzsche called the will to power. Now, this is another hugely misunderstood term. It's not about dominating other people. It's about the deep internal drive we all have to grow, to express ourselves, to master our own skills, to expand our own capabilities. And finally, step 3. Out of that self-mastery, you create your own values. You stop just accepting what you're told is right and wrong, and you start forging your own path, living by your own code.
And this is a radical shift from how most of us think about morality. Nietzsche made this really famous distinction. He said traditional morality, think Christianity for example, is a slave morality. It praises things like humility, compassion, pity, because, he argued, it was created by the weak to hold back the strong. It's a morality of resentment. The Übermensch completely rejects this. They create what he called a master morality, which doesn't come from resentment, but from a place of strength. It values things like creativity, ambition, courage, and having the power to actually shape your own world.
And the absolute pinnacle of this mindset, what ties it all together, is this beautiful Latin phrase, Amor Fati. It means the love of one's fate. This is the ultimate yes to life. The person striving to be the Übermensch doesn't just put up with their life, they love it, all of it. The triumphs, the failures, the pain, the joy, they embrace everything because they understand that every single second, good and bad, was necessary to forge them into who they are. They wouldn't have it any other way.
Right. Now, this is a really powerful idea, but because it's so radical, it has been twisted and misinterpreted in some really, really dangerous ways throughout history. So for this next section, we need to be crystal clear and just debunk the most common and damaging myths.
Misconception number 1, and this is the big one, the most toxic one, that the Übermensch is just a fancy excuse for being a ruthless tyrant, a justification for crushing anyone who gets in your way. No, this is a complete and total misreading. The entire battle Nietzsche is talking about is an internal one. The power, the mastery, it's all directed inward. It's about conquering yourself, your own fears, your laziness, your weaknesses. It's about self-creation, not dominating others. Huge difference.
Okay, misconception number 2, and this one has a very dark history. It's the idea that the Übermensch is some kind of biologically or racially superior person. And this, of course, was infamously twisted and used by the Nazis.
And again, the reality is the exact opposite. This concept has absolutely nothing to do with genetics, race, or where you're from. It is a spiritual, a philosophical goal. It's a potential that, in theory, exists in anyone from any background who has the courage to walk that hard road of self-overcoming.
And the last big myth we need to tackle is the idea that the Übermensch is some kind of perfect being, a flawless person who's made it, who's crossed the finish line and is just done.
The truth is, for Nietzsche, there is no finish line. The Übermensch is never finished. It's a constant state of becoming. The whole point isn't to arrive at some state of perfection. The whole point is the struggle. It's the growth, the continuous process of overcoming yourself day after day. The journey is the destination.
Okay, so that brings us to our final section. We've gone through what it is and what it definitely is not. But the big question remains, so what? Why should we care about this 100-plus-year-old philosophical idea today?
Well, when you boil it all down, the Übermensch isn't some person out there we should be looking for. It's a symbol. It's a symbol of the untapped potential that exists inside every single one of us. It's Nietzsche's big, radical challenge to humanity. He's saying, stop waiting for meaning to be handed to you. Not from religion, not from society, not from your parents. Take on the awesome, maybe even terrifying, responsibility of creating that meaning for yourself.
And really, that's the question he leaves ringing in our ears. It's not a comfortable question, and there are no easy answers. But it just might be one of the most important questions we ever ask. In a world where all the old, pre-packaged answers just don't seem to fit anymore, what will you create? What values, what meaning will be yours?